Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
So a few years back, during the boom of those weirdly specific t-shirts on Facebook, I operated a design agency. My clients were people selling those shirts, and I had a couple designers in my company along with a huge pool of potential hires. One guy selling thousands of shirts hired my agency. We did some designs for him, and since I was stupid, I accepted to be paid after the work was delivered. Surprise, surprise, he didn't pay and left me $500 in the hole. I was angry, but I moved on since I had a lot of work already. A few days later, I got his email asking if I was interested in designing shirts. This idiot CC'd me in the email along with some other designers. Since I had an agency, I recognized most of those designers because I had a huge pool of people I could potentially hire. I hatched a plan. He hired 3 separate designers. I know that because I still had access to his shared Dropbox folder, and I recognized those designers' names from my pool of potential hires. I waited a week and then sent those 3 designers an email offering them a higher pay, and they left that client. Now the client had no designers. I was desperate, so he hired me back and gave me $500 along with a 10% commission of shirt sales on Teespring that will pass 1,000 units. I put that provision in so that I could know what his winning shirts were. What I started doing was that I would use copyrighted vectors in the design. I would upload the design on Teespring before sending him the design. Slowly, I learned which designs were the winners based on a commission. And this is when I struck. I partnered with the original artist about the copyright infringement to report those designs to Teespring and point Teespring to the original campaigns I uploaded. Teespring returned all the profit made off of those designs to the original artists, and I got a sweet $10,000 from it all from the original artists as a courtesy. Once the mission was accomplished, I posted the scammer details in every group, forum, and the site's ripoff report so that he couldn't hire the next designers easily. You just don't mess with a man at his pay. Since I've seen a few posts lately about out-of-control HOAs, I figured I'd add my 2 cents to the fray. My family and I used to live in a fairly upper-middle-class neighborhood that had an HOA. The HOA seemed pretty mellow and dedicated to their original purpose and intent, maintaining property values. As these things usually happen, a few new people got voted in. Things started getting a bit more OCD and militant. Here are a few examples. We had to throw away our basketball hoop because the backboard was opaque, and the new requirement was glass backboards only. We got a ticket because my dad forgot Monday was Memorial Day and put the trash out. Of course, trash collection had been pushed back to Tuesday, so we got a fine for having the trash can out overnight. We went on vacation for a week and the grass got a bit longer than usual, but nothing unreasonable. Got threatening letters and a fine. We weren't allowed to have cars parked on the street for any reason. My biggest pet peeve was that anyone under 18 had to be accompanied to the pool by their parents. My 17-year-old self wasn't too fond of having to get my mom to come back in the sun anytime I wanted to go for a swim. Nor was she. I was on a Navy JROTC field trip to a naval base that I will leave unnamed for anonymity reasons, and stumbled upon what I still regard to be one of my greatest ideas. I was in a Navy exchange, basically Walmart for Navy personnel, looking at some of their surplus stuff when I came across an ejection seat dye marker. These are those very powerful dye markers that are attached to ejection seats so that in the event of a water landing after ejection, the pilot can be found easily floating in the middle of a huge patch of green dyed water. So I bought it for $8, a bargain at any price, and I took it home. One night after the HOA instituted unenforceable 10 p.m. curfew for adolescents under 18, I took a little stroll over to the pool and tossed that bad Larry on it. Much to my delight and nervous horror, It worked exactly as designed. The whole pool was neon green in a matter of a minute or two. Of course, I got the hell out of Dodge. The next day, as I drove past on my way home from school, I noticed that the pool was empty but still looked very, very green. In the ensuing weeks, I came to find out that the pool had to be drained. 660,000 gallons of water, and a professional power washing company had to be brought in to clean the pool basin concrete, which had absorbed the dye. Then the pool had to be refilled and retreated with all of the relevant chemicals. All told, I think it cost $10,000 to the HOA. 2 years later, the HOA president was busted by the IRS and arrested for embezzling $70,000 worth of HOA funds. He went to the big house for a couple of years. And before anyone tears into me for wasting water, this was in the South, not California. We have more water than we want down here.
Hey everyone, I've got a story that sounds almost too crazy to be true, but every word of it happened to me and my friends this past summer. It's one of those situations where you can't believe someone could be that entitled, but here we are. So my friends and I, a group of 6, have this tradition of meeting up every other day at a local lake for a swim. It's our little spot away from the crowded parts of the lake where we could just chill and enjoy the summer. This spot was perfect. Not too crowded, just the right amount of sun and shade, and the water was always cool and inviting. One day as we were all getting ready to dive in, this woman approaches us. We'd seen her around a few times, walking her dog or just strolling by, but we'd never really interacted with her. She had this stern look on her face, the kind that tells you trouble is brewing. "Excuse me, I've noticed you kids come here to swim quite often," she says. "Yeah, it's a great spot to cool off in the summer," I replied, trying to keep things friendly. "Well, I don't think it's appropriate for you to be here. This is a quiet area and your noise and splashing disturb the peace. I want you to stop coming here," she demanded as if she owned the lake. We were all taken aback by her audacity. "I am sorry if we've disturbed you, but this is a public lake. We have as much right to be here as anyone else," I said, hoping she'd see reason. She scoffed at my response. "We'll see about that. Just remember, I warned you," she threatened before storming off. We shrugged it off as just an odd encounter and didn't think much of it. Big mistake. The next time we met up for our swim, something felt off. Our usual spot seemed quieter, almost deserted. We dropped our bags and clothes on shore, as we always did, and jumped into the lake, laughing and splashing around, forgetting all about the strange woman from the other day. It wasn't until we got out of the water that we realized something was horribly wrong. Our clothes, bags, and most importantly, our phones were gone. We were left in our swimsuits, dripping wet, with no way to call for help. Panic set in as we scoured the area, hoping maybe we had misplaced our things. But deep down we knew our stuff was taken. As we stood there trying to figure out what to do, a note fluttered down from a nearby bush. It was from her. The note said that she had warned us, and this was our punishment for not listening. She had taken our belongings to teach us a lesson. We were furious and helpless, but little did she know she had messed with the wrong group of kids. One of my friend's dad is a renowned detective, and when we finally managed to borrow a phone to call him, he was on a case faster than you could say justice. The detective dad was like something out of a movie. He gathered evidence, talked to witnesses who had seen a woman matching her description hanging around the lake, and even got security footage from a nearby store that showed her walking away with our stuff. Within a day, the police were knocking on her door and they found all of our belongings in her house, along with a bunch of other items that suggested this wasn't her first rodeo. Turns out she had a history of taking things into her own hands whenever she felt wronged by someone. The charges against her were serious: theft, possession of stolen property, and even a few charges related to endangering minors, since she had left us stranded without our phones, which could have been dangerous in an emergency. The aftermath was a whirlwind. She was arrested, and the news of the incident spread like wildfire in our community. People couldn't believe that someone would go to such lengths over kids swimming in a lake. In the end, we got our stuff back, and she was dealt with by the law.
The year was 2014 or maybe 2013, I don't know, who cares? And I was a freshman in high school. On a general basis, it sucked. I mean, it was an American public high school with literally thousands of kids. It's a given that it's gonna blow some major balls. One thing in particular that made it extra sucky though was gym class. Specifically this one guy in gym class. This dude's name was Jack A. McGee, the A of course being short for a-hole. As the name would imply, he was a jerk. At first, it was pretty standard, high school guy in gym class, level of obnoxious jerk. You know the type, overly loud, unreasonably aggressive during games, bossy, tossing the collective brain cell back and forth between his two equally ape-like bodies. The usual. I don't know when exactly it happened, but he developed a sort of eye for me. After the first couple of weeks or so, he started asking me bizarre questions that I now believe may have been some sort of innuendo, sitting uncomfortably close to me, resting his hand on my gym shoe, general creepy behavior, you know? He once blocked the doorway with his body, this dude was massive, forcing me to literally squeeze my way through and crawl over him. He then tried to grab me and pin me to him once I was almost through, but I'm very good at dodging physical contact wherever possible, and dipped on him before his giant gorilla arm could catch me. I still shudder thinking about this. I cannot emphasize enough how terrible this dude smelled. But the true breaking point came during the peak cruelty of his school-mandated sadism. Gym swim. Before anyone asks, let it be known that yes, I did try to tell someone about this. I told my gym teacher for a semester really early on that Jack was making me incredibly uncomfortable. The gym teacher waved it off, saying he was just playing around and that it's probably because he likes you. His suggestion was basically to just put up with it and wait it out, because he was sure Jack would lose interest soon anyways. Spoiler alert, he didn't. Second semester rolls around and a 4-week period of gym swim descends upon us like the bloated carcass of a catapulted whale, crushing us beneath its wet, foul-smelling body. 40-some odd adolescents forced into a cold, overly chlorinated pool for 50-plus minutes. Adorned in swimsuits determined to crawl up into our jerks like Ant-Man himself. It was hell on earth, basically. As I've mentioned in a previous post, I am autistic, so the echoing sounds, reflected fluorescent lights, pungent odors, slimy floors, and assorted nonsense made the situation even worse for me. I wasn't officially diagnosed yet, so my complaints were written off as me being whiny, and I was told to shut up and deal with it. So I did that. I think I had more meltdowns in that 4-week span than I've had in the past 2 years combined. But whatever. On top of the sensory overload, there was Jack. I think something about being allowed to go shirtless and stare at the girls for an entire period emboldened him, because Jack promptly lost whatever semblance of restraint he'd had until then. He made frequent attempts to grab me, trying to hold me against his bearskin, which was disgusting, and I spent more of the class trying to evade him. He managed to sneak up behind me and snap the strap of my swimsuit, even trying to pull it down off my shoulder, but I jerked away fast enough to prevent that. I was furious at this point, but I'm like 5'2" maybe, whereas he was easily over 6'5", probably 300 plus pounds, and I'm not stupid. While all of this was happening, my new gym teacher, they switched every semester, was busy trying to keep a couple of the other guys from drowning each other. She was one adult forced to watch over 40 rowdy kids in a swimming pool. She was a bit preoccupied. The final straw came one Wednesday afternoon, the event that finally pushed me off the edge of the rationality I've been clinging to and sent me plummeting into full-on bloodthirst. There I was, paddling around minding my own business, when Jack and his two goons managed to corner me. I am immediately suspicious, hackles raised, as they ask me fairly banal questions about how the pool is today and the like, sniggering the whole time. I give short, terse answers trying to see if I could maybe slip past them. I spotted an opening and bowled for it, but Jack was apparently expecting this. As I swim through the narrow gap between him and one of his friends, he stretches his arm out and actually manages to touch my chest. I froze for a moment, the delighted giggling of him and his friends echoing in my ears as if from 1,000 miles away. The next thing I knew, I was out of the pool, being held back by the gym teacher, and Jack had a bloody nose. He was shouting angrily at me, calling me a crazy witch, as his nose gushed blood into the water. There was mass confusion among the class. I was told to change quickly and sit in the hallway. Apparently, the gym teacher had heard me screech like a banshee, followed by a number of shouts, and had looked over to see me wrestle out of Jack's grip, jump on his back, and throw him off balance enough to smash his face into the edge of the pool wall. I remembered none of this, but I did find a few chunks of greasy brown hair clenched in my fist that had evidently ripped from his scalp when the teacher pulled me off. I washed my hands thoroughly. It was decided that I'd go to school early tomorrow to have a little talk with the dean. They would have just sent me there straight away, but gym was my last class of the day, and the dean had already left by then for whatever reason. So it had to be postponed a little while. It was pretty heavily implied that I was going to be suspended, quite possibly even expelled for what had happened. I was furious. Not only had Jack made my life a living hell, but his horse crap was now going to be the cause of my expulsion. I wasn't about to go down without a fight, but I realized that I'd have to play this pretty smart if I wanted to weasel out of it. The next morning I did two things. I put on mascara, and I made a superficial but rather painful incision on my right thigh, high enough so as to be covered by my shorts. Normally, I hate wearing makeup because I don't like the way it feels, but I'd worn mascara before and noticed the interesting effect it had on my appearance. Specifically, I already had pretty long, pretty dark eyelashes, so adding mascara draws a lot of attention to my eyes and makes them look huge. Like total Bambi eyes, white, innocent, naive, and harmless. I sat down in front of the dean at 6:40 a.m. I didn't need to feel the fear in my expression, but I made sure to throw in something that could be interpreted as guilt, bowing my head and twisting my face in dismay. Needless to say, the dean was pretty pissed. "Do you know why you're here, young lady?" he said. "Yes," I said softly. "And you know that what you did is very serious?" "Yes," I said again, making my voice tremble. "Care to explain yourself then?" I began, my voice shaking. "I just wanted him to stop." "Stop what?" The dean prompted, his eyebrows furrowed. "I just wanted him to stop touching me," I blurted. As I said this, I reached my hand under the table where he couldn't see it and dug my finger into the cut on my leg, causing me to lurch forward as if in a sob, my other hand covering my face as my eyes watered from the pain. "Touching you?" the dean asked, his brows now on a collision course for Mars. I spent the next several minutes divulging all the crap that had happened to me that year, digging into my injury for some tears whenever necessary, and by the end of it, the dean looked horrified. He reaffirmed that no, I shouldn't have attacked Jack like that, but that they would have to investigate the matter further. I basically got off with a slap on the wrist, and after multiple testimonies from other girls, Jack got suspended for 2 weeks. I wasn't satisfied. They hadn't been able to expel him due to lack of hard evidence, but I was out for blood. He returned to school 2 weeks later and I was ready. One of his friends had a little brother in my bio class, a fairly chill dude named Owen, who I had worked out a deal with. See, Jack had been very vocal about his displeasure with me to his friends, which made its way to Owen, who, for the low price of bailing his dumb self out in biology, was more than willing to share that information with me. I had a direct pipeline. Anything Jack shared with his friends made its way directly to me via Owen, and as it turns out, this dude didn't keep a whole lot to himself. There was a lot of crap I was tempted to nail him for. For instance, I found out he was selling drugs, mostly Adderall and some occasional weed, from his locker, and had been cheating his way through most of his classes. However, I knew how suspicious it would look for me to report something like that so soon. It would probably just look like I had a grudge, which I did, by the way. I was trying to get even, which I was. He slipped up really bad about a week after his return, and that was when I struck. See, he hadn't been subtle about his displeasure with my retaliation.
I spent most of gym class sending really ugly looks my way. The gym teacher kept us as far away from each other as possible, but he managed to track me down in a passing period one day and rant at me about how I had screwed him over and that I was a lying little witch, yada yada yada, and that he'd make me regret it. Funny. I stole the words right out of my mouth. I found out from Owen later that Jack had been bragging to his friends last night about the switchblade he'd stolen from one of those hunting stores downtown, and promised he'd show it off to them later that day. So I seized the opportunity. I took a few seconds in the bathroom mirror, scratching at the scab on my leg until my eyes were teary enough to really sell the terrified victim look, then bolted down to the dean's office, stuttering and shaking, crying out for help. The front desk lady was understandably startled by the sight of a seemingly panicked freshman girl bolting into the office, and called the dean out right away. His face grew serious when he saw me. "Mr. Dean, please help! He's gonna kill me!" I cried. "Now slow down," he said. "What happened?" "It's Jack," I said, resisting the urge to grin maniacally at the hardness that appeared in the dean's eyes. "He cornered me in the hall. He called me a witch and said he was going to make me regret telling him. He's got a knife." "You what?" The dean barked. Everything moved very quickly after that. The security guards were told to search the kids' locker, while a couple other security officers were called down to get Jack out of his classroom and take him to the office. I was told by the front desk lady who had heard the whole exchange to hide with her in a copier room so Jack wouldn't see me. They found the stolen knife in his backpack and the drugs in his locker. That, combined with his previous charges, was enough to get him not only expelled, but arrested. I never saw him again, which is probably a good thing because I'm still mad. I will probably try to kill him if given the opportunity. So I think this falls into this category, but it all started with me purchasing a lawnmower at a big box hardware store. In the interest of keeping them anonymous, let's just call him Rob Lowe, or Lowe's for short. I walked in one day looking to finally purchase a new mower, and I was in luck as they had a smoking deal on a display model. I'm prepared to be going home with a new mower that day. I didn't bring my truck, so I simply asked if I could set it aside and come back in a little bit with my truck. I returned maybe 30 minutes later and picked up my mower and headed home. This should be the end of the story, but weirdly, it isn't. Fast forward about 2 weeks later and I get a call from Lowe's informing me that my mower is ready for pickup. Confused, I replied, "Pardon me?" So they reminded me that I ordered a mower about 2 weeks ago and it just arrived and is awaiting pickup. Now I know most would have seized the opportunity right there, but I decided to be a good person and I explained to the employee that no, I didn't order a mower. I bought a floor model and set it aside to pick up later, which I did. The employee thanks me, apologizes for the confusion, and says he will update the order. Well, 1 week later they call me again, same thing. And I once again explain why it's not mine. They did this once a week for 3 weeks straight. And after the third time I tell the wife I swear, if they call me again, I'm going to pick up my mower. At this point, now I'm just excited. I'm watching my phone hoping they will call because, in my mind, I've earned it at this point and I want my free mower. Well, lo and behold, week 4 hits and guess who calls? I am now ready to accept my free mower, but I am also unsure how this is going to play out. I don't know if it's paid for, I don't have a receipt, and it seems like a long shot. So I simply tell the employee I am so sorry I haven't been in yet to get it, but I got called out of town for work and just got back. And with that said, I have no idea where I put the receipt. The employee kindly replies, "Oh, no worries, it's paid in full. So all you need is photo ID matching the name on the order." Perfect. I call my wife to let her know I am picking up our new mower. She just laughs, still positive that once I get there, they won't have a mower to give me. But you'll be happy to know I pull in, tell customer service I'm here for my mower, show them my ID, and the next thing you know, some guy on a tow motor is loading a brand new, in the box, unassembled mower into the back of my truck, and off I go. still have that mower today. I thought about returning the original afterwards, but I just got nervous it would somehow raise the alarms. Then I was going to sell it on a marketplace. But shortly after all this, I had bought a new house, and my best friend put in a lot of hours helping me move, and he too had been looking for a new mower, so I just gave it to him instead as thanks for helping me. I still ended up with a brand new mower for essentially 60% off, and then was also able to pay for movers with the original one, so it was still a win-win. I genuinely tried telling them it wasn't my mower, but they insisted it was, and it would be rude to refuse that offer. What do you guys think about this story? I think this is actually theft. I think it was dishonest for him to take it. I don't think it's justified that he went and took it. Tell me what you think about this. I work at a craft store and one that charges almost double for every item, which is why we always give out coupons. This will be relevant later. So I finished ringing up a customer and called in the next one, who I will call the rude lady. Her entire attitude is condescending and she is just blatantly rude. So I'm ringing up items and I see that she has scrapbooking paper, which I have to scan individually because of store rules. I inform her of this like I do most customers and apologize for the wait, but I have to follow the store policy. The rude lady's response is, "Why are you scanning them individually? Just scan one and enter the number of how many I have." I inform her that our company computers can't do that. She then huffs air, crosses her arms, and is tapping her fingers on the table. Not 2 seconds later she goes, "I don't understand why you can't enter in the number." Again, I apologize for the inconvenience, but our computers can't handle it. So getting close to the malicious compliance, our markers are kept at the registers to prevent shoplifting. So the rude lady sees the markers and shouts, "I need markers too." I ask her which ones because there are different sets. She goes, "I just want some markers." And again, I ask her which ones as I gesture at the selection. She then goes, "Are you stupid? I just want some damn markers." Fine, just some damn markers? Okay. So I glance at them and I pick up the one I know is most expensive. Nearly $33 without a coupon. I just checked other non-craft stores and they sell them for about $14 for your information. I scan it and tell her the total of her purchase. She pays and then leaves. Well, that's not the end of it. About a week or two later, I saw the rude lady at the registers. Thankfully, she goes to the register next to me. Here is the ensuing conversation. Coworker tells her, "Hi, how are you doing today? I want to return these markers because they are overpriced." "Sure. Do you have a receipt?" The lady huffs air and then slams the markers and a receipt on a counter. The coworker is making sure everything was still there, but here comes the problem. The rude lady is missing 2 pieces of the marker set. "Sorry to inform you, but we can't take this. It's missing 2 pieces." "But I want to return them." "Yeah, sorry, there is nothing I can do about it." The lady asks to speak to a manager and the coworker calls for a manager. My manager tells her the exact same thing, and after a bit of going back and forth with arguing, the lady leaves with her overpriced markers again. I apologize to the coworker for having to go through that because I was the one who sold her the overpriced markers. But she said it was fine after I told her why I did it. I may have posted about this under an expired account, so if you've read this back in 2016 or 2017, my apologies. Years back, I had a 1986 Chevy Cavalier. My dad gifted it to me, which was super nice of him. It was not the greatest car, but it got me from point A to point B usually without any problems. One day I was headed to a friend's place, but I forgot that the Woodward Dream Cruise was going on. Side note, people who live near this event call it the Woodward Nightmare Cruise. It's an unending line of classic cars driving up and down Woodward Avenue from Detroit to Birmingham, an annual mobile homage to Detroit being the Motor City. And good times if you like old cars, modified vehicles, or craziness like motorized sofas or bar stools. As you can imagine, it draws quite a lot of people each year and causes some extreme gridlock.
So I'm caught in this cruise, and maybe half an hour of stop and go traffic has my old car overheated. If I didn't get some coolant, my engine was gonna be done. I'm a few blocks from a gas station, but traffic just isn't moving. So I pulled into the first driveway and parked in front of a shop I had never noticed. As I pulled in, steam was seriously shooting out from under my hood. Just as I'm getting out of my car, this 60-ish gray-haired lady in a purple skirt comes running out the shop and yells, "You can't park here! This is customer parking only!" I looked at her and then my car and she stammered, "You need to move your car or I am calling the police." I wasn't going to move my car. Driving at all would have literally killed it. But immediately, inspiration for malicious compliance tickled my brain and I decided to walk into this woman's shop. She was clearly pissed off by this move and ended up shadowing me under her shop, watching me like an angry hawk. The place turned out to be one of those new age incense/candle/astrology type shops. Okay, whatever, I can work with it. Partially to make my point, but mainly because I needed my car to cool off before driving it. I calmly scrutinized every single item she sold. All was her watching my every move. She followed me the entire time. In hindsight, I'm surprised that she didn't have a stroke. Meanwhile, this one other attendant working is getting her kicked by how busy this little place is the whole time, as she's doing all the actual work. I felt bad for the lady working, but I can practically guarantee this store lost a fair amount of money because this lady insisted on badgering me, both to shoplifting by other people, which I had no intention of, and to people just leaving because their checkout time was crazy long. About 3 hours later, the crowds thinned out, and I had seen literally every item there was to see in this place. At this point, I figured my car was cooled off enough to make the short drive to a nearby gas station. I snatched up a $1 item I'd come across hours ago, a tiny violet-colored floating turtle-shaped candle, and I paid for it. She was still visibly angry and very unfriendly as she rang up this single, insignificant, and inexpensive item. As I left, receipt in hand of course, I smiled and said, "Wow, it looks like I'm a paying customer. Bye-bye." Angry gray-haired lady actually said nothing, but she literally turned red in the face. Also, the second cashier was somehow laughing hysterically as I walked out. Oh, and my mom ended up loving the little turtle candle. When I was 20 years old, I moved from Philly to Florida for work. I worked at a bar that was expanding, and they paid some of us to transfer down and help get the store open. Originally, there were 4 of us, splitting a 2PR apartment. Later on, though, we added another roommate and decided to rent a house. I was the youngest in the house at 20, but also the most responsible. All bills were under my name. I collected the money for rent and everything else. Well, the new guy was 30 years old and loved the party lifestyle. We didn't know much about him except he was from New Jersey and he worked with us. But we needed the 5th guy to afford a house, so he was in. Living with this guy was a trip, but I can't say it wasn't fun. He did enjoy his cocaine, but when he'd go on a bender, he'd clean the house for hours from being so amped. Even though he made 3 times the money I did, I'd have to lend him money for bills and crab. But he'd always pay me back. And he was a horrific gambler. But watching him lose like mush from Abe Bronxdale always made us laugh. No nonsense, this guy could have been a Seinfeld character. All in all, he was pretty good roommate. In the beginning. After a year, we had decided we were all splitting up when our lease was up. My 3 roommates all managed to knock their girlfriends up at roughly the same time. So we all gave notice that everyone had to find a new place to live. I could never just live with this guy alone, especially in a house that I needed 5 people in to afford. So we all start making our plans to move on. Well, in the last 3 or so months, this guy just changed. He buys a dog and just lets the dog crap and piss all over the house, expecting us to clean up after it. He'd go to work and tell us not to leave the dog in his room. Crap like that. Even when we asked him to clean up after it, he ignored us. Then he starts going in the fridge and eating other roommates' food and drinks without asking or giving the slightest crap. It was like now that he knew he was a short timer, he didn't care about being courteous anymore. He tried borrowing money from me. Denied. And then, when we were talking about splitting up the house furniture, he jumped right in, wanting to know what was his. Only problem is the four of us bought all of the furniture before he moved in. He put no money out for it, but he demanded he got something. So we gave him the barbecue grill because none of us wanted it. Finally, the time came where we started moving out. The 30-year-old was going to stay in the house by himself for a while and tried to find more roommates. This was where my revenge came in. My 3 other roommates had moved out. One was moving to Maryland and agreed to move back to Philly for free. He was picking me up at 6 a.m. on the day after Labor Day, somewhere in South Florida. The week before, I called the phone company, the electric company, the cable company, and the water company, and had each scheduled to be shut off at 8 a.m. that morning. I made it a point to be clear that it had to be turned off at that time, and they all agreed. And at 6 a.m., I left. 2 days later, I called up my other roommate who worked with this jerk and asked if it went to plan. He told me it couldn't have gone any better. He said the guy showed up to work covered in sweat and looking like a complete mess. Said he woke up at 9 a.m. sweating. So he went to check the thermostat and realized the AC wasn't working. So he went to the bathroom to wash his face, and lo and behold, he had no water either. So he had to go wash his face in the pool. Then he got dressed and realized he had no electricity when he couldn't turn the lights on. And now he's flipping out. So he grabs an old electric bill and goes to call the electric company only to find out he doesn't have a phone. He went down to the electric company to get it turned on, but back then you needed good credit and a valid ID to get electric and water turned on. I knew this from the experience I had where I had to beg because my credit was just okay and I did have an ID. I knew for a fact his credit was awful and he had no ID. Apparently he was there for 3 hours pleading with them to turn it on with no luck. Then he had to go to work. He eventually got the landlord of the house to get it turned on under her name, but for 3 days, in late summer in South Florida, he had no electricity, no phone, and no water, which meant he couldn't shower and had to flush his toilet with buckets of pool water. It was glorious.